to Mark Richards now. Now, he is a world-leading cardiovascular researcher and is a pioneer in the field of cardiac research. His work has changed the way heart failure is diagnosed and treated, not just in New Zealand, but around the globe. He graduated in medicine from Otago University and has since earned Otago Doctor of Medicine and Doctor of Science degrees as well. And as well as being a cardiologist of long standing here in Canterbury, he is the director of the hugely respected Christchurch Heart Institute, which sits within this campus's Department of Medicine. He's a joint professor too at both the University of Otago and the University of Singapore. For more than 30 years, the Christchurch Heart Institute, or CHI, has been recognised as a world leader in the development of diagnostic tests and treatments and the understanding of risk factors for heart disease. Of particular note was its discovery in 1995 of a hormone produced when the heart's under pressure, and the hormone blood test they discovered from that is now the most widely used test for heart failure globally. The group and its now commercial arm, Upstream Medical Technologies, has developed several sophisticated blood tests which are being used internationally in diagnosing heart failure and assessing how intensively patients need to be treated and with what drugs. He and his team have also been working with research centres around the world to define the best use of the heart marker troponin to determine which patients can be safely sent home from the emergency department when they present with heart issues. Mark's a worthy recipient of numerous honours and awards, including the University of Otago's highest research honour, the Distinguished Research Medal. He's published more than 300 research papers, and in recent years his research is focused on the characteristics of heart failure patients from different countries and ethnicities. Welcome.
Thanks, Laurie, and I want to make it clear that all those things I did entirely by myself. Thanks again for coming out on a cold evening, everybody. My brief is to tell you whether or not you might be a walking heart attack. Well, if this chat reminds you of yourself, you may be at some possible risk. There are about 17,000 admissions to hospitals in New Zealand every year for people with heart attacks. 5,000 people per year die of this condition. That's roughly, I think, 100 a week or thereabouts. And even if you survive your first episode, over the next year there's quite a high chance, 1 in 6 chance that you will have another event which could be fatal or non-fatal. So what is the problem? Well, the heart's a complicated beast. It's a strong muscle that provides circulation to every tissue in your body all day long, every day. It never takes a break. If it does, then that's bad. It has a blood supply, and this is where a lot of the problem arises. These vessels course over the surface of the heart and provide it with oxygen and blood. They fuel the heart. It's got a wiring system so everything works in the correct order. It's got valves so blood flows in the correct direction. But really, the main reason for heart attacks resides within these blood vessels, which can become narrowed. And then, if circumstances are unfortunate, the narrowings can then sort of break or crack a bit, rupture, and then the vessels clot. Then that bit of heart is subject to threat and may even be killed. The new complications include bad things. That's called ischemic heart disease, and the World Health Organization scored the burden of disease in the world in 1990 and said that coronary heart disease or ischemic heart disease was about number 5, but by 2020 it had risen to number 1 and it's stayed there ever since. However, that's the world, and it makes a big difference where you are in the world. It's very good to be a Kiwi. So the peak threat to middle-aged New Zealand males, these are 35 to 65-year-olds, was way back just before about 1970. And over the last 50 years, this is what's happened to our rate of coronary heart disease death in this country, from about 460 per 100,000 men in that age group down to about 60, an 85% drop over that period of time. So it's not all bad, and stay in New Zealand is probably a good piece of advice. Don't go to Russia. This is Russia. That's a New Zealand pattern. Russia doesn't know whether it's peaked yet or not. It keeps changing its mind over recent times, and its current rate is still 5 times in Russian men as it is in New Zealand men. In fact, the rate for New Zealand men is about the same as Russian women, because women always do better, and that's probably the only thing in common that New Zealand men and Russian women actually have. So what are the things that make you predisposed for these vessels to get narrowed and then to block? Well, there are things that you can do not much about. Whether you're a man or woman, how old you are, or how much aging you're going through, and your family background. You can't do much about those. There are things that you can attack with some degree of success. Your weight, amount of exercise, your blood pressure, whether you smoke or not, what your cholesterol is like, being told us a bit about cholesterol, presence or absence of diabetes. And then, very important, there's a thing called unknowns, because I hate to tell you this, but around about 15% of people who have heart attacks don't have any of those background things in red, and we don't really know why, and that's something of the focus of research around the world to this day. So what happens if you go along to your GP, go to Ben when you're age 45, and you want to know, are you in good shape? Do the next 5 or 10 years look pretty safe, or is there a bit of a threat on the horizon? And what we used to do is use these colour charts. We now use sort of algorithms and computers, and it's all a black box. But I like these charts because you can understand them easily. There's a set of charts for men, and there's a set of charts for women. I'm just seeing if I can make a dot appear. Seems I can't. And you can divide them into whether they are smokers or non-smokers, have diabetes or not, and what their cholesterol is and what their blood pressure is. You can see within that red surround that we put up there, if you look down towards the lower left-hand side, that's a man who has normal blood pressure in that age group, lower end 45. He has normal cholesterol levels, doesn't smoke, not diabetic. And if you look at the colour of a square and then refer that to the key in the middle of the slide, you'll see that person has somewhere between 2.5% to 5% chance of a major cardiac event or cardiovascular event sometime in the next 5 years. That might be a heart attack, fatal or non-fatal, a stroke, or some other arterial catastrophe. So that's some degree of handle on how to get an idea of your own personal risk. And those are all things that GPs can conduct and do routinely all the time. There's some good news for New Zealand in that these colour charts and these equations were originally based on United States data. And it turns out that after you look at a few 100,000 Kiwis and see what their risks really are over about a 10-year period, we're actually a lot better off. Another reason to stay in New Zealand. Something like 40 or 60% overestimate of risk if you use the American data compared with using New Zealand data for New Zealand. What can you do? High blood pressure, very prevalent, 1 in 5 Kiwis. It's a silent condition, often not apparent until you have your stroke or have your heart attack. Not all of it is detected. That which is detected, not all is treated. That which is treated, not all is controlled. There are, however, on the bright side, many treatments available, and they do work. The problem is they take time and persistence, both by the patient and by the doctor, because often you need more than one medication, you need more sustained efforts at various lifestyle factors. But you can have these things done, and they are available, they do work. And if you do control your blood pressure, you definitely reduce your risk of heart failure in particular, and coronary events as well. So don't give up on it. If you've got blood pressure tablets, try and make sure that they're enough, and get your blood pressure checked regularly. What about smoking? Well, smoking in New Zealand is also quite a good news story. You see that from 2022-23, only 6.8% of adult New Zealanders smoke, and that compares with about something less than 20 years ago where we had 16% smoking. Even better news, in young adults, 18 to 24-year-olds, now less than 4% smoke, whereas back in about 2005 and 6, 25%, 1 in 4 of those young adult people were smoking. There are tools to help people stop smoking, and our primary caregivers do understand these tools, can offer them. I'm pleased to say that my grown-up son and daughter have recently successfully stopped smoking with the aid of these techniques. So you can stop, and if you can, you really should. One of the most key things you can do if you're unfortunate enough to have a heart attack, having been a smoker, is to stop smoking. That cuts your risk of a further heart attack by 50%. It's actually more important than almost anything else you can do, including coronary artery bypass graft surgery. Obesity, we all know we're supposed to move more and eat less, easy to say, very hard to do. And the history of obesity management programs for the last 30, 40 years has been one of consistent and almost total failure. However, there is a bit of a light at the end of that tunnel in that you can supplement lifestyle and nutritional measures with a new family of drugs which appear to be effective and safe. This is an example, semaglutide, the so-called GLP-1 agonists. And this graph shows that over a 4-year period, a group of people who came into the study weighing about 100 kilograms could drop 10% or more of their body weight and keep it off for 4 years continuously. And that also corresponded with a reduction in heart attack rate and stroke rates. So it actually is not only possible, it turns out it's actually worth doing. It's the first time that's been proven. So we don't have ready access to that class of drugs right now in New Zealand. There is some, particularly for diabetic people, but it will be coming, so it's something to keep in mind if you struggle with this. The Christchurch Heart Institute looks at a lot of people who are still healthy on the left-hand side of the slide, those that have got their coronary disease, and those on the right-hand side that have advanced to the point where their heart is quite badly damaged. And what we do is try to refine that risk estimation that Ben told you about. So I showed you a slide earlier, and we defined a man at 45 who had about a 5% risk. Now, it'd be nice to know not just that you're one of the 100, and somewhere in that 100 there are 5 people who are going to be unlucky. It'd be really nice to know whether you're one of the 5 or not, wouldn't it? That would be very useful. So a lot of our research is aimed at refining risk stratification, at being more accurate at identifying who is in trouble and who is safer. And we do that partly through identifying blood tests. One of our blood tests is called NT-proBNP, and what we've found is that you can add that test on top of all the things I've mentioned, blood pressure, cholesterol, etc., and you can refine a degree of risk. So the top line there shows the top levels of NT-proBNP, and compared with the lowermost levels, the risk is increased by about 10-fold, even though these people look pretty much the same if you just saw them walking in the street. What about those pesky unknown things that account for that 15% of heart attacks that we cannot really understand why they occurred in the first place? Well, some of those are going to be hidden away in our genes that produce proteins that are slightly abnormal and make your blood vessels more inclined to narrow and then later possibly clot. So this is a work in progress. Those are chromosomes lined up. We've all got a fair number of those, and the genes sit on the chromosomes. In 2006, there were about a handful of positions right across the entire genome, all the chromosomes together, that looked as though they could be associated with the risk of heart attacks if they were slightly different from the usual standard gene sequence. So that's not much to go on, but this, as I say, is a work in progress, and as the years have ticked by, there's been a lot of progress in this area, so that we now have over 2,000 candidate points in our genes that may be partly responsible in some people for why they get a heart attack. And every one of those dots you can see on that slide represents an opportunity. It represents increased understanding at one level and possibly a protein target to diminish or increase to reduce or someone's risk. The other part of our toolkit, aside from markers in blood and genes, is images of the way the heart looks. This is ultrasound, so the upper image there is a healthy heart moving very well and symmetrically. The lower one is far too big and scarcely moving at all. And so what we do at CHI is we try to use this toolkit of markers, genes, and pictures of the heart to predict, explain, prevent, sometimes even reverse heart damage. We can see where narrowings in the arteries are, and we can also take a look with special scans at the heart. That central chamber there is the interior of the left ventricle, the major pumping chamber. It has a thick wall around it. The arrows are pointing to a part of the thick wall that looks a bit different on that initial scan. And you can use tracers that show which parts of the heart are actually metabolizing, which cells are alive and functioning well, and which are not. And you can see the arrows are now defining a rather non-functional area. So we have a wide toolkit, and we're making steady progress as time goes by. My last couple of slides, what happens if you do have a heart attack? What are the prospects if you do have one? Well, help is on the way. In Christchurch, it should be possible to reach within the main perimeter of the city anywhere within 7 minutes of a call, but you do have to call. So you've probably seen the ads on the TV of the chap who takes a shower instead of calling, and someone who takes a walk instead of calling. Don't do that. We cannot help you if you don't turn up. And sometimes you'll turn up and it'll be unnecessary, but we'd much rather it was that way around. If you do get in and you've got a blocked artery, the chances of opening it with angiography and putting a stent in to prop it open are very high, and that will diminish damage and improve your prospects. Once that's done, other things are always improving as well. Our ability to lower cholesterol is getting better and better and better, with less and less side effect problems. Our ability to control people's blood pressure is getting better and better. Our ability to manage clot is also getting better. So the range of drugs other than rat poison that we used to be stuck with for a long time is actually vastly better and vastly safer than it used to be. You can have devices put in, pacemakers that keep things ticking at the right rate, shock devices that can actually defibrillate you from inside if you need it, pumps that can actually augment your own pump, and in the most desperate situation, ECMO, extracorporeal membrane oxygenation, can take over the entire function of your heart and lung temporarily while your body is getting a chance to recover from whatever crisis has led to that state. Then there are more standard measures. Coronary artery bypass graft surgery is actually one of the most frequent surgeries done in the world now. Valve surgery, valves can be repaired and replaced both by catheter and through the chest, and if all else fails, with a bit of luck, we might be able to get you a new heart. That's a hard trick to do, but we do it, and it so happens that in New Zealand and Australia, survival rates after heart transplant still rank in the best in the world. However, it would be really best to avoid all of that and pay attention to your weight, your exercise, your cigarettes, and your cholesterol will actually help you stay away from us, which is what you really want to do. So I'd like to acknowledge our funders and our thousands of patients, and thank you.